Call the meeting in order, and can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
We'll move.
Seconder.
Seconder, David.
David, any questions? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No? Great. Motion carried. Are there any conflicts to declare as a result of the agenda or any items being discussed today? Knowingly or otherwise? But not hearing any objections, we can move on to the update on the MC advisory.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sitting in for John today. He's unwell and we don't expect him back for a day or two. Cold, flu kind of symptoms. Please bear with me if I don't have the intimate knowledge that he has with a lot of this stuff. But before we talk about the update on MC advisory, if you are unaware, I do want to let you know that last night, the city of Fredericton passed a motion to basically appeal the decision of the board with respect to the pool to the new municipal commission. To the best of my knowledge, this has never been done before. The commission is very new. I don't want to, we'll find out how they work as a result of going through this process, I guess. And can't provide any more detail than that. But we will keep the board and this committee fully apprised as we go through the process. Moving on to the MC advisory work. It's relevant to this committee because we have engaged MC Advisory, which is an affiliate of McGuinness Cooper, to do an organizational and governance assessment of the board. And some of you would probably already have been contacted by a lady by the name of Heather Stamp. And she is interviewing all of the directors and the CAOs. We have a milestone meeting with her on Thursday. So I'm not exactly sure where she is in that process. But I do know part of the discussion that she's going to have with folks will address the pool process itself. And when we get that report, again, that'll be shared with the board and this committee as well, given its particular interest in the pool decision. And I guess I'm curious, how many of you have been approached by her?
I have.
Chair?
We haven't as of yet.
Okay.
I have, and mine's later. I thought she was gonna do quick, that's October.
Yeah, mine's on October. I think it's the
Okay,
same day.
so she scheduled them with
Yes.
you, but you haven't had the discussion?
No,
We haven't even had a schedule, so.
Right.
it's
When
near
you say
the-
we, you're speaking for the mayor as well?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
so anyway, gives me a question to ask on Thursday, or John a
Oh,
question to ask on
When I
Thursday.
read her email, it said she wanted to do a quick 2 or 3, and then we're into October. I'm saying it's September and it'll all October. I mean, what's in between? I thought it was a little weird.
Well, I guess it's true that, you know, if you ask 3 people what the definition of quick is, you get 3 different answers.
I think mine's October 5th preceding.
Right.
the-
So that's what I know about that. I will, I'll undertake to send out a note after that meeting to not only you folks, but the board as well, at least with respect to timing. Because I know we all are interested in the timing.
The other part that'd be helpful too is just even if it has to be 3 weeks from now, like some of our schedules are pretty hectic.
Yeah.
So near as I know, she hasn't reached out at all,
Yeah.
even to set a date. So October is pretty crazy, as people know.
Sure. I'll confirm who's outstanding.
I can't say the actual notifications probably came out. Marty, would you say 3 weeks ago?
Oh, they're in September. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Kind of threw me for a loop until the end of October. And then I'm trying to find a date now.
David, did you receive one?
Yes. And I was quite disappointed. I was the second one to answer and I sent my time frame in. Oh, that's taken. And I suggested, well, everybody should have replied all, then we wouldn't be into that chaos. Anyway, I've done nothing since, and I don't know if I will meet with her or what's taking place, so I've heard nothing else, so.
Okay, well, I'll make sure that we explain to her, the amount of energy that is consumed by the municipal budget process, along with running your municipalities as well, and politely try and put our foot down with her with respect to timing.
Is this the same person, Don, meeting with the CAOs also?
I'm unaware of any details around any other initiative. This is ours alone. I
Yes,
understand that there's some other process going on. I'm not plugged into that and not part of it.
but the other process was CAOs only, right?
I don't know.
That's what I've been told, so.
Yeah.
What was her name again?
Heather
Heather
Stan.
Stan.
John, you could answer that, couldn't you?
I'm unsure of what you're talking about, so I'm not really sure. I mean, I understood that this Heather was going to meet both with mayors and CAOs, so,
And she is.
right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday, October 1st, I mean, but.
So, Mr. Chair, to Director Duplessis' comments, I have heard a rumor that there's a project going on with CAO. I had to call it a rumor. I don't think that's fair. I've heard second or third hand information. And I don't know timeframes. I don't know anything about it other than that.
Okay. That should handle an MC advisory work item, would you say, unless,
Yes, unless directors have, members have other questions.
nothing?
I guess I have a question. Grant, were you, through you, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Grant, were you approached by Heather Stamp at all?
No.
I think we're gonna ask her to do that if you have time to talk to her, particularly with your view as the independent, unattached participant.
So is it governance related specifically to this committee or to governance of RSCs?
It's organizational governance assessment of the RSC, but with a focus on this particular decision. So if you could provide input, I think that'd be helpful.
I think that'd be very helpful, particularly where, you know, it's under the direction of the RSC and board members that we involve subject matter expertise on the committee. And it was a key, certainly a key aspect of it, including CAOs, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. It's better to have more than one view on it if you
Yeah.
can get it, so definitely,
Everybody else is attached to something.
Yes.
yeah.
Any other comments, questions, queries? No, with that, we'll move on to planning for 2025 and the asset inventory update, which is item A.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In previously, we had, an assessment done, an inventory done of the recreation infrastructure in the region. Not everyone of the communities participated. And some folks said, we'll get back to you later, and then life happened, the pool happened, so it is staff's intention to revisit that and refresh it. We have some money available this year that we can use to re-engage the consultant, which won't impact our surplus or deficit position at the end of the year. And our objective is to take that information and through our GIS folks, plot it and put it on our website. And so, interested in your views on that. And I guess it's a heads up, but we think it's a worthwhile initiative.
The consultant we had during the pool thing,
Jim Tech, yes.
Gemtech, weren't they doing this?
Yes, they were doing they did the first bit, and so we would bring them back in, talk to the folks that we didn't get to, and refresh and make sure that it's current. And so we see it as a small job.
I would add to your query then, and Don, that they were doing it, but I know sometimes there's, as you had mentioned, there's lacking participation, not because perhaps of will, largely because of time and, on some of the community's part, I would say, you know, it's in the flurry of. Is that last year or this year?
Early this year,
Early this year, which feels like 2 years ago.
yeah, no kidding.
Trying to, you know, handle reform and understand roles and sometimes re-equip staff. We've turned over our entire staff for the most part. It's exception of one individual within Arcadia. So, you know, we're finally settling down perhaps a little bit now. So I would imagine a lot of communities are in the same state, other than those that had maybe small changes as a result of reform.
But that's just a phone call to the right person in the municipality to say, what recreation facilities do you have? That's not one taking a drive to Ormoc and going around all the other places. Call one person, they'll tell you what they all have.
And the difficulty with that the consultants have to be careful of, and I've experienced this directly, is trying to compare apples to apples, and particularly some facilities lend themselves to great disparity as to what one person might consider a ball field and what another person might consider a ball field. I mean, that's, you know, you can go from a Royals field to basically a patch of grass and dirt behind an arena somewhere real quick, and it becomes problematic when you're mapping that those are both the same type of facilities. Same goes for soccer pitches and so forth. So that's just one thing that I think it's much easier to compare, you know, an NHL size artificial rink or a 25-meter indoor pool. But some facilities are more difficult. So we'll just want it for the information to mean anything. I just think the consultant has to somehow identify.
I think that's a good point. The is not the attributes of it.
Yeah.
I can tell you specifically from personal experience in soccer, you know, this would be suitable for A,
Yeah.
but not B.
Sure. No.
Like the province put together that recreation infrastructure planning tool. We ended up just including pools, arenas, running tracks and field houses because they could be readily defined. Whereas the others we struggled with. So it doesn't mean that they can't be defined, but it just means it's a little bit more intense as to how you classify that. So when you know, a constituent is looking at it and says, oh, well, Gagetown's got a ballpark, and, you know, well, what does that mean really, right?
Mr. Chair, I think another thing we have to be aware of is certain pieces of infrastructure, I'm thinking about pickleball, are exploding. It's almost like a measles outbreak. There's a dead end street in my neighborhood that only one house has access to. The street, it leads to their driveway. I biked by it the other day, and they've drawn out a pickleball court. They have their own private pickleball court, and the net was on the lawn. So, you know, I'm not suggesting we include that, but I'm just saying that pickleball courts are exploding. And one of the reasons that we're keen on doing this is, you know, in our other activities, talent acquisition through economic development or physician recruitment, it's a competitive world, and we bid the region's quality of life attributes. And so that's why we want to make sure it's complete and as robust as possible.
I would add to that. So one of the not only in terms of what is appropriate for, from a, perhaps if we're talking about sporting, its usefulness perspective, like, against regulations. But to your point, there's a great deal of infrastructure out there that doesn't fall under the hands of the municipality. It could be owned by the province, it could be owned by, not-for-profit. I believe all those things certainly would be added to the inventory, right? I think it's important to the, so we, definition is important in terms of, ownership, how it's used. Because there's a great deal of community-based organizations out there that do provide, recreational infrastructure and assets that, are key to our communities.
I guess for myself, it would just be a matter of, understanding the scope to which we want to move forward so we can be clear because, clearly I know Oromocto, for example, can supply anyone with GIS data on all the assets we have. We don't need a third party for that. However, the bigger, broader picture may be that if you're looking for that scope, a third party to consolidate, to compare apples with apples, then certainly that makes sense. It's just a matter of knowing what more specifically you want to get out of that relationship with the consultant in order to map whatever you feel is an appropriate asset. Because yes, agree with Grant that a field is not a field is not a field. However, somebody would have to go through that exercise and comparison. But we're not just talking about those assets. And in the initial list dealt with parks, playgrounds, cultural centers. So again, those are hard to scope because what's a park? Is a green area in a community that's just grass that people can use a park? It could be.
It is if you try and take it away.
Right? But, then it's just trying to identify the scope to which you want that level of detail. And so I can appreciate that some communities don't have that internal resource, while others can simply press a button and send it to your GIS folks.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to do that, we'd want to make sure we have an appropriate scope on it.
That's good feedback. We'll make sure that that is considered in the discussions.
Okay.
In the delivery.
Any other comments? David?
No, none at this time.
Okay, moving on to the trail connectivity project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, one of the most common things that we have found in, in talking to our communities with respect to, classic recreational, infrastructure is trails. Seems that everybody has them. Everybody's very proud of them and they're highly used. I've been on, several communities trails and, pass a lot of people. I learned something today. I was directed to look at pump trails because apparently there's pump trails in Minto. And I was unaware that what a pump trail was.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one.
So I'm here to tell you a pump trail is a biking trail. It's highly landscaped or hard surfaced. It has rolls and banks and
Could have a competition.
I've done
Pretty-
those things.
pretty cool. Pretty cool. Not something I'm going on with my electric bike, but I'd like to see people use one.
I've done it on my electric bike.
Yeah.
It was a fat bike and it was excellent for it.
So anyway, having said that, it's a kind of a positioning statement. We're curious as to what role the commission might play with respect to trails. I think there are obviously promotion of trails also fits into the recruitment of people, whether they're medical or just general labor force. But then there's the connectivity of trails. And I understand that I believe Nashwauk and Fredericton are working on a project to connect their trails. Everyone would like their trails connected. And so one of the things we're thinking about, we're going to be talking to communities about, is if there's a realistic expectation that their trails can be connected to others. And if so, what role that we can play with it. I know other service commissions, Southeast, for example, are highly involved in connecting their trails all the way down the Bay of Fundy. And so that's something that we'll be working on, and we'll circle back here once we have done the investigation and come forward with some type of recommendation and or request for direction. And so at this point, as we start our investigation, really kind of thirsty for some comments. Is this a silly idea? Should we focus elsewhere? I'm curious as to what the members think, Mr. Chair.
Any comments out there?
Well, just pick up on your comment about Southeast doing it, like I was a part of that project,
Right.
it's probably been 10 years ago now. And I believe the consultant was Trace Consultants.
Right.
And they did a trail connectivity study of that Regional Service Commission, and it was really quite a detailed document which mapped, if I recall correctly, mapped the existing trails, and then it proposed connecting routes. And it identified or addressed like who would be the potential leads to do that connectivity work. And then it talked a little bit about financing, you know, that sort of unincorporated piece. And so it's, you know, it's a great, in my opinion, it's a great project, because what other facility do we have that really, you know, extends the breadth of the commission's boundaries? And so anyways, I'd encourage you, like that document does exist, and it might be beneficial to take a peek at, have your staff take a peek at moving forward.
And from a public perspective, low barrier of entry in terms of usefulness.
Just, you know, what we see between Frederick and Ormond, it's amazing. Yeah, you know, there's some issues around that train bridge right now, but it's, you know, just that kind of, like, I don't know how many people realize that trail exists, but it's just wonderful. And I mean, we should be duplicating that.
I've talked to about 25 young residents trying to recruit them. And a couple of, in talking, they like it here in Fredericton. He said he's from, I remember he's from Hamilton, bought a house in Fredericton. His wife works online as a doctor in Nunavut, but he's working around here, getting his doctor stuff. And he said he loves it because of the trails and the biking. I can just go out and leave, but get on my bike and go wherever I want. So it is a thing, because these young people coming here want to have a life and do the stuff that they like to do. So the trails aspect, and you can basically go anywhere on trails now.
And for all ages.
Yeah, and if you go down to the Minto and stuff, they have some really good ones down there, so, but that's be awful hard to. The infrastructure aspect, like a ball field but we have miles of trails, just gotta keep ATVs on, they have their own as well, so.
Yeah.
The ATV trails, but the bike trails.
Or provide definition to it, because I can tell you down in Nova Scotia around the Digby area, there's multi-use trails that involves everything from horses to ATVs to people, bikes across the gamut.
Yeah.
So that goes to definition.
Yeah, I mean, we're one of the few provinces that hasn't yet grasped the idea that trails should be multi-use. And so we have these arguments that, you know, this is only this kind of trail or that. And most of the rest of Canada has adopted if there's a trail, everybody's got to be respectful, but they're for everyone's use, right? We haven't gotten there yet, but it's certainly something to explore. I mean, we're all for the, you know, initiative of connectivity, right? I mean, if we can scope it that way, then, you know, that's good. What I wouldn't want it to be is individual groups wanting their circular trails or, you know, upgraded as a result of something, but the connectivity piece does resonate with people in terms of regionality, right? So, you know, to Grant's point, I mean, we work with Trace a lot. They have a good group, and yes, certainly would come up with a plan in terms of figuring out what everybody has and how it may connect, and those would be the pieces that definitely would be you know, potential for partnership in that regard.
David?
I agree with John, like I think we've gotta get over this single use trail for not single use, but for single users. It's gotta be multi-use, but it's gotta be respected. I think that's the best way that the trails will work. I know out here, we get to the city limits and there's no motorized vehicles once you hit the city boundary, and until that changes, I don't know how we can have connectivity other than walkers or bikers. And I think, like I said, I agree with John, this needs to be multi-use. But how we get there, maybe the Service Commission gets us there, I don't know.
Thanks. I would add, one thing I would add is, you know, there's both, it's land and water. I know there's a great deal of initiative going on and directed by Fredericton in particular on this Blue Trail initiative. And I know from my municipality's perspective, Arcadia, we're involved. And that's been a great asset. Pretty much all of our communities have existing waterways within them or going through them that could be part of the trail initiative. Well, and, you know, with kayaking, canoeing, paddle boarding, people run to these things, literally run and bike to these things for use. And I know some of the research that's been done by Fredericton Tourism, not to speak out of turn, but there's a great deal of draw into our communities for that kind of infrastructure, or not even infrastructure, just knowledge. What is here? What can be utilized?
The St. John River has never been utilized to its best ability,
No.
ever, that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to extend to that concept of blue trails or rivers is certainly a valid one. I think what we're seeing right now is most of those would exclude the St. John River because we're really talking about paddling and more active type of use on the river, to which the St. John River, at least down in our neck of the woods, most people would prefer to paddle the Ormuckto River or one of the branches thereof versus being right out in the middle of the St. John River, which is not always the best
there are
idea for
portions.
paddlers.
There are portions of the river that's like, we're trialing out a regatta in this coming October.
Yeah,
For a portion of the St. John River, that's perfect for that type of thing.
right,
So again, if you don't know it's there,
Yeah.
you would exclude it.
right,
And I would certainly echo you. There's lots of parts of the St. John River you wouldn't want to be,
right.
or you'd have to be very experienced to be there.
But there's certainly lots of tributaries that
Yes.
could be explored that people aren't aware of, to that vein of that blue trail type situation.
We took to a good group of the residents on two party boats, and they didn't realize how nice it was out in the water around Ormond.
Oh, it's St. John River,
Don't go there, you don't
426.
realize.
426 kilometers, I believe, of navigable water.
Yeah.
Excluding all the
How
options.
nice it is, and it's just calm and cool. So,
So certainly another aspect of trails and trail connectivity that should be explored.
So what we'll do, Mr. Chair, is we'll try and digest this, and try to narrow a focus when we come back to suggest a role that the commission might play in this that's not duplicative, that focuses on connectivity and, Blue Trail is a very interesting concept, so. And I believe that I could be wrong, but is that area, say, less administered than the walking trail, the hard trails? So, you know, that may be an area that lends itself to the commission more easily than others.
Well, it's a lot less, well, let's certainly say regulated, because New Brunswick is one of two provinces within Canada that have very little rules around it. And we do not have a lot of waterways in this part of the province that have riparian water rights.
Right.
You know, you can not anchor and whatnot. Some parts of the province there are those waterways, so, you know, it is fully publicly open. Thank you. Any other comments? My computer's locked. I think the next one, and it won't unlock, is other.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are actually two here that more or less, I think we can combine them. You know, other is, sort of general discussion, direction to staff and possible quick wins in the capital region. So, here we are, looking for, areas of interest that you would like us to investigate. You know, we've got 2025 coming. We're gonna look at trails. There seems to be an interest for that. The asset inventory project will mature. What else should we focus on, be interested in, or research, or what else, I guess? What have we missed?
Well, I always say that it's probably capital region tourism and not infrastructure. But on the St. John River again, if you're traveling from here to Jemseg,
Right,
you can't see the river because of all the junk that's growing up on the side of the roads. That could be a project to make for tourism, whatever, to make the river, that river drive, you actually see it. I know you can't take trees down and stuff, but you can take underbrush and everything else, and it's never been done for probably 15, 20 years. Little forestry project by a couple of students in the summer would clean that right up. And it would look nice. It's a nice drive.
Mhm.
I've driven it for years. You can't see it now.
yeah,
But it's, that river's a gold mine, but, you know, instead of going the highway, they go the river and have a nice drive along the river. And
I was interested to see, the city has had hired this summer two young folks out in kayaks. I don't know if you're, so, but they're cleaning up the shoreline.
Yeah.
It was,
But cut the
yeah,
crap, so you have to see it.
yeah,
Or, yeah, and, or at least have an I hate to use the word inventory of what is the appropriate, you know, what can we do in that? I mean, a lot of those things are sensitive.
Oh, yeah, like trees and stuff you wouldn't leave, but the underbrush and then the suckers and everything else, you grow up and grow up thing, alders and everything else, you can cut them. You know, damaging the flow of the river. So.
It's a comes down to whose jurisdiction is that though to do that work.
Province DTI.
So yours.
Not always, but it's a little more complex than that, but.
A lot more.
But certainly, I mean, I know staff at the commission be familiar with those regulatory reforms out there when it comes to rivers and riverbanks and surveys and who owns what, but you know, certainly, I guess, something that they could look into, no doubt.
Well, they're doing it to Wharfs, they're already doing it for the Wharfs alongside the river. Going down to Burton Courthouse and putting an awful lot of money into it.
I
Yeah,
think that's through the St. John River Society, I believe. They had a funding.
yeah, wharfs are different again, but yeah.
But it's, I think there's a lot to your point, to both points. We don't know what we don't know.
Oh,
And there's varying access rights, there's provincial municipal highway agreements that, you know, may cover only roads and municipalities have the ditches. You know,
Yeah.
there's a whole slurry and slew of not knowing who, and also the financial side of it.
Yeah, no doubt jurisdictionally, it can sometimes be complicated, sometimes not, but, you know, that all depends on where you are on the river and going through different communities and the amount of, you know, historical survey information that's available and so on and so forth, but, it's something to consider,
If we make it an objective.
you know, to that point for us, I mean, we'd see another part and may play back into, to some extent, the Blue Trail, but is, you know, the marina network along the rivers, you know, we've been told we saved a lot of people's, you know, economic development by virtue of reinvesting in putting a fuels delivery system, which was not shared amongst any other communities except for those in Oromocto. So in the future, if that's something that the region sees value in, we certainly don't mind, you know, operating and maintaining it. But it's a discussion like that, you know, if it plays into the broader, and that includes Fredericton because they don't have any fuel delivery systems anymore. And so,
But that you mean like the fill up at the wharf?
correct, yeah, yeah. They're not cheap to keep and they only have a lifespan of about 10 years before you have to redo them, according to most of the regulations. So it's something, again, that might be a consideration in a longer term view for this committee in terms of how can you help other communities too, by virtue connect to that network and make that, you know, now, most people will see that as, you know, the power boating, so it only applies to a small cohort of population and it's not typically endeared to by those who are into active transportation modes like paddlers and so on, but it still plays a part in the quality of life for some and for those who live in the region. So it might be something to consider, you know, down the road more longer term.
Yeah, and just an extension of that, you know, not only a marina network, just public access, like, and that goes back to the inventory, right? We probably should be having a consultant consider that, like, where are the public access points along the river or the different tributaries? You know, we hear a lot today too, but particularly with the old river wars declining and or getting sold to private interests. I mean, there's a risk of losing that public access, so it should be, you know,
Oh, yeah.
trying to increase
Access to
yeah.
I think that is one thing that Fredericton Tourism is driving with the Blue Trail initiative, but we need to be in sync because we can feed some of this information that Brad said as priorities, both regionally and, you know, municipalities. Because there's certainly economic drivers.
Yeah, no doubt. And
Certainly.
to Grant's point, public access is something that most places strive to achieve, and not only now public access, but accessible public access. So, you know, all of those things come unfortunately with a price tag. And yeah, when they originally built most of the wharves to which we allow the public access to, no one ever considered accessibility. So it is another challenge that most places face when they're, you know, trying to provide that public access and keep it up.
And risks and liabilities.
Yeah, yeah, so.
Well, you know, just kind of knee-jerk reaction. We haven't spent a lot of time thinking about waterways. And let's call it blue recreation. It might be, I think it's something we'd like to explore and perhaps see if we could structure some type of pilot project with the The province likes pilot projects. They like it because it gives, they're participating, they see something, and they don't see an ongoing commitment, right? So there's
Was reform categorized as one of those?
like, proof of concept, more or less. And so, if that's what they're keen for, maybe we can serve them a diet of that and, see if we can find something that is sustainable thereafter. So, we'll certainly go to work on that and, probably reach out to you, John. We have, some facilities in place in Grant. Right, I can see, looks like a worthwhile area to explore at a minimum, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, because there's, we always hear, we're trying to figure out what brings people to New Brunswick, and it's typically those things, trails, rivers, natural beauty,
Yeah.
all those things. So knowing that, we're not gonna compete by having multi-billion-dollar buildings and facilities, cause big areas have those already, but they don't have the natural beauty that we can provide. So if that's something that we can leverage, then certainly it's something worthwhile to talk about.
Yeah. And we provide people quick access to it.
Mhm. If anybody listened to CBC this morning, we had to, everybody recognized the name Bob Azumi. So he was talking about fishing here on the river and how stellar it is. And
They're having a big competition, isn't it?
this fact here
Yeah.
in
This weekend,
Fredericton and, it
They're
was
like, they're massive fishermen.
Yeah.
just raved.
From around the world.
Yes.
And that's happened many times in our
Scary
region
about a
this
month.
year.
Yeah, the bass fishermen
Yeah.
are strong.
And multi-species fishing, we've had tournaments and across the region this year that were just phenomenal with, I don't know, what's called small little boats that paddle fishing, don't know what you call it. But,
Well, those bass boats are really expensive.
oh,
Can be.
oh, that is a.
Multi-million-dollar industry.
Yeah.
People think that power boating is expensive. When you're getting to that, you're in another league.
Oh, yeah, it's not much to see a $600 gas bill for a boat at the marina for the weekend.
Yeah. I did
That's
ask
just a
one-
fill up.
I did ask one guy how much it costs to build this boat. He said, I don't really know, but I know I can afford it.
Yeah,
So I got this one. That's what he said. I like that.
Boat buck is $1,000.
yeah.
No, it's good. I'm glad we talked about the trails mission, but blue and brown.
Yeah.
Good.
So, Mr. Chair, that's about all we had to bring to
Okay.
the committee today.
Thank
And
you.
we're happy to hear anything else that we haven't touched on.
Committee members? David?
No, I'm good for now, thanks.
I think we're at a point where, it's great to be running through some of these initiatives that are in our future, that we can move on from Regional Infrastructure Committee that kind of chart a course from scratch and get some of these wins out there that is, that not only represents their individual communities, but the connectivity between them. So, because, listen, they're invisible lines.
Yeah, and I think it would have been great to start out with this instead of what we had to, because I really think most people are engaged in that aspect of connectivity and certainly prepared to even invest in that, because they can see themselves and see value versus a random large building in a certain area that they just don't see themselves in. So I think there's value in this approach, and so we'll look forward to future discussions on it.
Okay, can I get a motion for adjournment?
So we'll
Second? All those in favor?